Welcome back, listeners, to the Cosmic Confluence podcast, where we explore, rather, we try to explore the intersection of soul, science, and society. I'm your host, Sana, and today, listeners, this is going to be such a beautiful, powerful conversation because we are diving deep into the importance of personal transformation and then the collective shift reshaping our consciousness with a truly, truly remarkable guest who bridges the worlds of military service, energy work, and psychedelic research. Listeners, let me introduce Susannah Rose Stokes for all of you. Susannah, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Sana. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Susanna, before we talk about all these topics, let's talk about your journey. I mean, you have been in the world of military, you have been doing energy work, psychedelic. How exactly all of these tie up? I mean, if you can explain.
That's always a great question because they seem like different ends of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
and as I was growing up, I always found myself to be very interested in healing arts and more alternative things like yoga, right? And then I found myself to be, um, and then I found myself to be drawn also in more of my egoic side to leadership and the warrior path. And so now I feel like I'm finally embodying both. And that was really because after going to war, I experienced a lot of trauma first, and that led me to a spiritual awakening in which I started to remember that I am actually here as a healing agent for my community, for the world, and I've started to embody some of my more natural gifts.
I mean, do you have ever like a dilemma between, the words you have been into, you have been a part of, and the choices you make or you made? I mean, do you sometimes feel that uh although, I mean, yeah, war is bad. It has to be avoided, but sometimes it becomes inevitable. There are collateral damages, but then also I this is healing is my purpose. I'm sharing this kit with others as well. Do you have sometimes dilemma about all this?
Oh, yes. I would say that every time I go through a Metamorphosis, which is the name of the company that I run. Um, every time I go through my own metamorphosis, I experience a dilemma. I experience this sort of cognitive dissonance in which there are two things that cannot coexist anymore, right? And I think for a moment, I regret what I did before. But then, of course, I realize over time that it was that thing, it was that difficult emotion, it was that pain, that suffering that ultimately led me to the peace, to being on the other side of it. And so in the case of war, I went into war and like you said, war feels inevitable. And I think in a lot of our cultures, that's what we tell ourselves. We say that, well, this is the last option. It's the only thing that I can do. And after going into war and realizing that it doesn't work, um, and going into the darkest parts of that trauma and that suffering within myself and within the collective, I realized that we absolutely must find another way. That whatever that part of us that says, well, we have to go to war because we have to protect ourselves, there has to be a better way. And some of that comes from, we're going to talk about the great change that we're in. Some of that comes from a prophecy that was awakened within me as I was going through my healing process, and it revealed to me that there are always other ways of settling our conflicts with one another.
That is really, really beautiful, Susanna, and really honest. I really appreciate your honesty because, yes, I couldn't agree more with you. Couldn't agree more. Agree. Okay. So, uh, Susanna, what does personal transformation mean to you now? I mean, compared to before your spiritual awakening, is it like you became better, you became more confident, or you became more human or conscious? What exactly? How do you define it?
Mm, yeah, what a beautiful, powerful question. Personal transformation to me means coming into the truest version of myself by shedding and integrating the layers that are not me, essentially. It's just becoming more and more connected to who I really am. And of course, who I really am, just like who you really are, is love. We're all made of this infinite love essence. And I call it our true abundant essence. That's how I describe our most deep, true version of ourself. And in order to get there, we have to go through various experiences of transformation and growth and evolution. And and that process for me often looks like um, getting away from or moving back toward the center, away from the radical edges of polarity, which we have a lot of in this culture. We have a lot of um, we have a lot of places where you can go and be radical. You can be on the far right or the far left. You can be very masculine or very feminine. You can be one way or the other. And if you're always on the edges, then you're always going to be in conflict with the other edge versus coming back into the center and sort of the middle path, which of course is taught by a lot of our faith systems, most notably in Buddhism.
Mhm, mhm. Wow. And I mean, I totally, totally connect with how you define it. Because sometimes it's easy to romanticize the idea of transformation, but for someone with a military background, this shift, I believe, hasn't been subtle. So, was it like destabilizing you? I mean, I guess I asked you a question before we began with this one, but still, was it like destabilizing at the first?
Oh, yes. Remarkably destabilizing. Yes, I was most definitely, deeply disillusioned. That's the word that I often use. There was a period of disillusionment in which my entire reality was destroyed. So, what I originally thought, for example, I went into the military thinking that the military was this great force for good that was doing good in the world and was protecting the country, and the God that I believed in was a masculine God that was omnipotent and looked a certain way and was sort of like a human, but up in the sky, right? And that was the kind of God that I worshiped. He had a big white beard. And and that was the deity that I was introduced to, and then that was the idea of war was this authoritarian process by which we go out and we save the world in some way. And when I got there and I sat in the reality of it, which was that the reality was that there was no bad guy. There was no enemy, there was no villain, there was no thing that was against me. And when I realized that, that started to cause my entire construct of reality to crumble. And I no longer understood what was real and what was true. And so I had to start from what we might call the ashes, right? Everything burned down in my belief system, and I fell away from Christianity and from the faith that I grew up in. And I thought, well, is there even a God? Is there even any kind of deity or force that's bigger than myself?
Mm. You know, I mean, in our culture, it's like you worship. It's like a multi deity culture. I mean, worship so many form of God. It can be a feminine, it can be masculine, and then it can be like a confluence of masculine and feminine energies. But if I take one incident from my childhood, um, I mean, before that incident, I was hugely like God fearing. I kind of feared that if I didn't do this, God will punish me in some form or the others. For example, it's very true, and this is one of my deepest like fears, that if I laugh or if I'm too much happy, the next day definitely I'm going to suffer. I don't have that right to be too much happy or laugh or enjoy. And that kind of used to happen. And then I started like cursing myself, just restraining myself that Sana, you don't have to be so much happy. Just be normal, because you don't deserve to be happy, because something bad will happen the next day. But then that incident kind of opened my eyes, um and I kind of stopped following all those hardcore rituals and everything. And I just thought, yeah, maybe I'll believe, I'll have a faith that yes, there is a higher power, but I'm not going to be like in that rabbit hole of fear and anxiety, because I will decide if I am going to be happy or I'm going to be anxious or sad. So, yeah, and it's not at that scale of transformation, but that kind of changed my thought process a lot.
This is such a common experience all around the world, really. It's almost like it doesn't matter which faith system you grew up in, there's an incredible amount of guilt and shame in most of the faith systems that are dominant in our world. There's a lot of telling you that you are not worthy of being full of joy and happiness, because over time our um our society has built up lots of guilt, and not just from harming each other, but also from harming ourselves. And of course, our ancestors will say, well, I had to starve so that you could have a full belly. And then we think, oh my goodness, well, I feel so guilty for having this full belly and for being so abundant, when my ancestors or my family before me didn't have enough food, right? Or the people over in another country don't have enough food. When in fact, the healthiest thing for all of us is for you and me to remember the joy that we have and to experience the fullness of the joy so we can then share it. And that our ancestors who came before us, they had a hard time so that we don't have to. They experienced difficulty in their lives so that we could have a better life.
Exactly.
And the idea of the better life is to be fully, just like release ourselves into the feeling of thriving, of I am allowed to thrive, because this life is about thriving, is about feeling an incredible amount of happiness that maybe my parents or my grandparents didn't have the opportunity to access, but I get to. And that is what evolution is, right? Is we are always going up and up and up. We're ascending in that. And I believe that we're living at this sacred time of great change in which we are creating a new earth. We're creating a new version of this earth that we've lived on that is at a higher baseline frequency. And so we're quite literally raising the vibration of the planet, and your willingness to be happy and joyful, just like my willingness to be happy and joyful, even if there are other people around me who can't access that, right? It's okay for me to be able to access joy and happiness and bliss, even if other people cannot.
Exactly. Exactly. But my happiness will not be at the cost of others,
Mm.
misery or sorrow. I
Mhm.
encourage others to feel happy or satisfied. That is
Yeah.
the kind of faith or um, spirituality I would like to harbor within myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, right? Our happiness is not at the cost of others. It is a natural mm, outcome
Mm.
of these of the ways that we've learned as a society, right? Because there were other people who had different versions of life so that they could learn and grow. And then every generation, every next group of people gets a little bit wiser, a little bit stronger, a little bit more capable than the last. And there's a lot of people who don't believe that right now, that we've actually they believe that we've sort of regressed and we've gotten worse as a society. But I truly believe that we are at this threshold of a great awakening in which we are all giving ourselves permission to grow and expand into this energy of deep happiness.
Beautiful. And I guess this is the cosmic shift that you talk about that we are all going through. So, are there any signs that you see that point to this shift being actually real, um, tangibly or intangibly, and not just a spiritual language in there?
Can you ask that one more time for me?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, you talk about this cosmic shift, that we
Mhm.
all are going through. So, are there any signs that you see that point to this shift being real, not
Mm.
a spiritual language?
Mm. Oh, yeah, like the tangible effects of this change. Oh my goodness. It's very real in my life, for sure. And and I would say w one only has to look for the changes, and you will see them.
Mhm.
That's really the biggest, um, way to begin to see this. So there is a lot of here's a very practical, tangible example. There are many billionaires right now who are beginning to just give away their money.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of capital changing hands
Mm.
from the old, more authoritarian hierarchical systems into more decentralized systems. We are also seeing um, another place that I like to look at is human animal relationships. We're seeing more and more preserves that are popping up and more concern for our earth, more organizations that are dedicated to the earth, more conversation around climate change and our impact on the earth. We're also seeing animals that were that tended to be beasts and predators in the past become friendly with humans. I follow several beings on Instagram who have made friends with lions, right?
Yes.
And right? And these huge animals. Things like this are an example of the ways in which we are becoming more in tune with our planet and realizing that there is actually no predator. There's no
True.
enemy. There's no other. We are all one. And I would also suggest that the ways that our religious systems are coming back into oneness, and you have access now, AI and the internet in general gives us access to all of the information. So even if I grew up Christian, I can also learn about Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and all of these different faith systems and recognize that all of them say very similar things.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
And yes, although it may happen at a small scale, but exactly, I mean, drop by drop, and a river or a sea becomes an ocean. So I think it will take some time, but then there's definitely a silver line of lining of hope in there.
Yes, there absolutely is. Yeah. So we have an opportunity right now to become m- channels of love, right? And to connect and to recognize that there is literally no predator out there that's coming to get us anymore because we are the supreme being on this planet. And with that responsibility, also comes a duty to protect this planet, to protect each other, to protect ourselves, and to protect even the animals and the plants that we once thought were dangerous. They're no longer dangerous. And it's a really beautiful shift for me to begin to see. These are just very small changes that I'm seeing, but there's many, many, many others that are all bubbling beneath the surface, and there's going to be many more.
Definitely. But then,
Yeah.
Susanna, some would argue that this, transformation, it is a privilege. I mean, uh, I kind of had a career-wise transformation because I did have those resources to rely upon.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if it was like some of the non-negotiables were there with me, I wouldn't be able to afford this transformation because from a corporate experience of 10 years now to become just an independent podcaster, it's a risk. It is a risk. But then right
Mhm.
now, I don't have yet those huge responsibilities upon me to fulfill. So that's where my question is to you, Susanna, that not everyone will have the space or safety or the resources to, wake up. So how do you, what's your opinion on this?
Mm. Yes. The thought of people not having resources to wake up.
Mhm.
I absolutely understand the consideration here, and I have enjoyed a level of comfort and privilege to be able to wake up in the way that I have.
Mhm.
And also because of the layer of society that I live in and the relative safety that I've lived in, there are many other darknesses that I have personally faced that someone in a different storyline in their life would not face. And so what I've started to see is that it really doesn't matter how many resources you think you have.
Mhm.
Every single person has unlimited resources. You just have to look for them. Now, the ways in which you look for them will be different at every layer of society, right? No matter if you're in a lower position in the socioeconomic system, you may say, "Well, I don't have enough money for that." Well, that's a thing I said to myself too, is I don't have enough money for that all the time. But but often what you have more access to if you're in maybe an impoverished community is you might have more tribe. You might have more simple pleasures in your life and a little more simplicity in your life. Whereas someone who is in the tech industry in San Francisco and has all of this money, they're overwhelmed by informational noise coming from every direction, and they're also deeply isolated and lonely because there is no tribe there. There's no loyalty, there's no devotion.
Mm.
There's very little family. So we find that at every layer of humanity, there is a unique problem.
Mm.
And and so it's really just about you figuring out and navigating through the unique challenge that you're experiencing so that you can transmute and alchemize um that particular challenge for yourself and for the people around you because you chose to be in that particular layer of society
Mm.
for a good reason. Yeah, you chose it for a good reason. Just like I chose where I am for a good reason. Sometimes I don't always know what it is, but I know I chose it. So, I do have, a stopping point here, Sana, and I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Absolutely. So, before we wrap up, Susanna, if our listeners would like to connect with you, how they can.
They can connect with me by going to our website at metamorphosis.ventures, where they'll see all of our offerings, our virtual gatherings and our live gatherings, and our courses as well. And then they can follow us. They can actually follow me personally at Susannah Roses on Instagram, and I spend a lot of time there. So you can also DM me. I am so ready and excited to talk to you and hear from you.
Wonderful. I'll have all the links in the show notes. And Susanna, thank you so much for this profound conversation. And I really appreciate your heart centered perspective and the courageous work you are doing.
Hmm. Thank you, Sana. That's
And
so
to our
great.
listeners, until next time, stay connected and stay curious and keep tuning to the Cosmic Conference podcast. Thank you.